All the
Oh,
audio people are gonna be so
right.
confused. Like, what? Did I press play or not?
You know what it is? You know who it is. We are back with another episode of the BG Perform podcast with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes. Jerry
What's
Hayes,
up?
how are we doing?
Good. We're trying to get the kickflip down. Picked up the board
Kickflip.
again.
Did
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I didn't lose my ollie. I still got it. Now we're working toward kickflip,
Wow,
and
that's gonna be
eventually
huge.
I'm gonna get it. It's considered an expert level trick, and I feel it because when I tell you I was more sore in my legs than I have been in a long time, like right in the groin. Holy moly! But we made almost zero progress on it, so I'm feeling pretty good.
There
A
we
lot
go.
of room to grow. So,
One of my favorite memes is the guy who does he's like playing Tony Hawk, but only doing the tricks that I can do in real life, and he just
he
keeps
just-
falling. He just keeps
yeah,
falling.
that's literally me. I just ollie, 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 ollie. That's it. I feel good about the ollie. It can get up pretty high, but that kickflip, as soon as I get it, I'm gonna be very happy. So we got to keep working.
So stupid. All right.
How about you?
Good. Just getting through it. We're getting through it.
Getting through what?
Everything.
Everything. Nothing stands a chance.
Today, we're going to be talking about how to progress athletes safely to their next competition. This is something I think is, especially in the fight world, is very, very mismanaged. And I think that a lot of the times the goal for people is just to get to the competition, which is absurd, when in reality the goal should be safely, effectively, and obviously feeling good. Like, it's just something that was mind-boggling to me. In the first couple times I trained people, they were just like, yeah, if I feel like shit, that basically just means I'm there. And I'm like, what? Like, how does that make sense? You know what I mean? Especially in fighting, where you have to cut weight, you have to basically like fight the scale first before you even get to step in the ring and fight anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's a pretty touchy subject, because I do think that the way that coaches handle it, I think mostly the sport coaches, the skill coaches handle getting to the competition. I think the way they see it is just like such a bad view on it. I mean, to say it lightly. And I think I've had a lot of experience with, the coaches. Even recently, I had an experience with a coach. I didn't speak directly to the coach, but the coach that I was working with was working with one of my young fighters in Ireland, and he was talking about doing this sort of like training drill, like 7 weeks out from the fight. And I was like, what do we like? Why? And basically his reason was because like it needs to be hard. And I'm like, that sounds like a disaster, like a recipe for disaster. Like,
What do you mean by training drill?
so there's this thing in MMA called a Shark Tank. And the Shark Tank, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but the Shark Tank in MMA is essentially like one guy is in there sparring, and there's a fresh guy either every minute for 5 rounds or
Got
every
it.
round for 5 rounds, that sort of thing. So it's
So your opponent doesn't get tired, essentially.
yeah. So it's basically
Yeah.
like you're getting a fresh guy every single round, or in some cases, like I've said, I've even seen 5 guys who train every minute of each round, which is miserable. You know what I mean? And like they'll switch out, for example, like let's say you're, because it's really the one thing in MMA too is really hard to find like elite training partners, or people, for example, who are good at a lot of stuff. Usually, it's like, all right, if you're fighting a wrestler. Like for example, a guy like Islam. If you're gonna fight Islam, it's fucking impossible to find a guy who's as good on the feet as Islam and as good of a striker as Islam is. So you sometimes
Same
usually have
things.
to. What is that?
You said as good on the feet and as good of a striker.
Oh, sorry. As good of a grappler and as good on the feet as Islam is.
There you go.
So usually it's like you're either training with like a really good wrestler or you're training with a really good striker, and that's how you kind of like go back and forth. But obviously it's a different animal when the person can put it together. But in those cases, like a Shark Tank, it'd be like, you have 5 different people, anywhere from like 3 to 5 different people. Ian did it before the Shavkat fight, where we were doing like 5 3-minute rounds, or 3 5-minute rounds, and every 2.5 minutes the person would switch out. So the first one was like a really good striker, the second one was like a really good wrestler, and then there was a third guy who was kind of like a mixed fighter who was a little bit like he was good at both. and that's what you have to do. So, but anyway, so this guy was trying to do this like 8 weeks out, and he was trying to do this like once or twice a week for 8 weeks, which is just, you know, that's not where you want to be 8 weeks out from a fight. Let's just put it that
Mm-hmm.
way, right? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think my story for today is, I remember the first time. Well, actually, that might just be my story. Is like, you know, when you're hearing these people who are coaches of athletes, putting them in those situations, thinking like, hey, this is what you need. That, like, that's how you hurt people. That's how you have a really short career. That's how you lose fights that, you know, you shouldn't lose. Because a lot of time in fighting, like, you know, the people who lose aren't always the ones who have the least amount of skill. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's usually who can stand in the fire longer. And I think that MMA coaches get that mixed up, and they think that, oh, if that's the case, then it just has to suck all the time. So you're better at dealing with the suck. And I think that, like, that's such a wrong way to put it, because you can still get better at that situation of, like, when it really does get hard, you can still be there by being fresh and being
Yeah.
ready and not hurting and not having to second guess your body or go off the game plan because your body hurts. And I think that's the situation where a lot of coaches struggle. And I've seen that. And when I stepped in, I got a lot of flack actually from a couple of the people that were around me as coaches, because they were like, you're taking it too easy. Like, you're taking it way too easy on these guys. They need to be more, they need to be pushed harder. They need to do more, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. Right. And then when I was training, like, for a while, I was training like exclusively, well, not really exclusively, but I was only training like 2 guys who were fighters. And I had like 12 women who were fighters or competitors in jujitsu. And they're different. They have, you know, things that are literally bleeding without dying
Mm-hmm.
for weeks. Shout out to my client Lenny for that quote. But you know, they're having things go on in their body. Like, they can't be training like that around certain times of the month, and you have to, like, really kind of be aware of that. And you can't push them into the ground because they just aren't going to recover the same after a little bit. And it's the same thing with any type of athlete. I was getting a lot of feedback being like, "Oh, he's you're too soft. Like, you're not doing what needs to be done." Blah blah blah. And then they were going out there and winning, or they were going out there and performing. And I was just trusting myself and trusting what I need to do, because I think with MMA specifically, there's so much that you have to do on a weekly basis that it's so hard to manage. And I can obviously adjust that, right? And I can
Mm-hmm.
make sure from the minute they walk into the door to the minute they leave, everything is adjusted so that they can get the stimulus that they need. But I think what goes wrong a lot of times is people overlook that. They try to do too much. They try to run these guys into the ground, where it's like they're having a hard ass session in the morning, and then they're coming to you having a hard ass session at night, under eating, dropping calories, not feeling good. You do that for 6 weeks, you're either going to get hurt, your weight cut's going to go to shit, or you're going to get knocked out. One of the two, right? You can do that for a little bit early on, but when you
Mm-hmm.
get to that higher level, you know, and a lot of people, what happens early on is they go through these shitty fight camps, they go through these shitty weight cuts, they go through all this stuff, but they get away with it because they're fighting such low level competition. And then they get to the high levels where the guy's, his shit's on point, his weight cut's on point, his striking's on point, and you can't just use physical skill to get out of it. And you see a lot of these guys, you know, who get into these, and you can always tell who they are. You know, you can always see, you know, who these guys are early on, because they either don't train hard, or they train hard but they party, or they're 9 to 5 fighters or athletes, right? Where it's like, I'll be an athlete from 9 to 5, but then outside of that, like, forget it. I'll drink, I'll smoke, I'll eat like shit. Um, and that's the sort of thing where, as a coach, it's really important to avoid those types of athletes, know what you're looking for in those types of athletes, and avoid them. And on the other end of that, make sure that when you do find really high level athletes, you keep them on the right path moving forward. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I can't clear my throat today. I I think that that's one of the biggest issues that I have with the industry is, especially now, there's like this big war between like the old school lifting and science based guys, where like they're both doing the same thing, they're just phrasing it differently.
Oh, some of these
And then like
science-based lifters, they're
some of the
fucking,
science based stuff is stupid. Like you get the fucking cuff on you and you're doing it's like nonsense science based stuff. I'm talking more like actual train, like us. Like we use science based training,
Mhm.
but we have the old school mix where we know that like okay, well, I'm not going to put a cuff around someone's forearm and have them do single arm flies and like squeeze a dumbbell in the other. Like, get out of here, man. Just do the fly if you're going to do a fly. But with that same thing, like the whole fatigue management thing on the science-based thing where they're going way too easy, and then the old school thing where it's just like Arnold's, like, or what was it, Rich Piana's 8-hour arm day, right? So like there has to be a balance between it, and especially in athletics, because to kind of like basically to start this off, I always said the same thing to a lot of the high school kids that I would coach. You have some of the kids come in the weight room like, coach, I don't need to do anything, man. I'm about to run over these kids on the field. I'm like, yeah, listen, I'm gonna be straight with you. Right now, you're killing it. You keep that attitude up, all these kids who are fighting for their life to compete against you are gonna become better than you, and they're gonna run you over. So you either need to shape up and start like changing the way you train and look at training, or decide that right now you're at the peak and it's gonna be downhill from here. And the same thing goes. Those people who took it very seriously are going to do better when they're at the higher level than the people who didn't. And the people who take everything very seriously but they train hard are going to they're going to understand their body more. So the coaches who say like you need to go harder on them for this or harder on them for that, especially in fighting where you said that people's weight, right? Like their cut can make or break the fight. If it's a rough cut, like they'll be dead by the time they get into the octagon or the ring. And in these moments, there's a point that you said, and I wanted to touch on it, and I can't remember what it was based on that. Oh, I just lost it. No, it was like the weight cut, and then like being ready and people going too soft on people. Oh, that's what it was. There's this push from some coaches to be high intensity all the time. And when you're not at that point, it's looked at as like soft. But you have to remember there is a true max recoverable volume that you have and a minimum effective dose. Yeah. Sometimes, especially in fighting, if you're working toward that max recoverable volume and then you have a cut, you're screwed. Because your max recoverable volume, if it's here, it's going to start to shrink to here. And now you only have this little window to work in. Minimal effective dose or minimum effective dose, you can get a little bit further toward maximum recoverable volume. But if you're doing so much that now you have your weight cut and all these things that affect your energy, your sleep, because cutting weight doesn't just affect your energy, it affects how you sleep. Yeah, and all that recovery, you're not going to be able to perform. And by the time you get to your event, it's like, well, I might as well have just shot myself in the foot and then got in the ring. Mm-hmm. So being able to understand minimum effective dose and max recoverable volume on a scale, especially with fighting, is something that I think a lot of coaches need to kind of like pull back the veil and be like, all right, maybe we don't need to go nuts today, or maybe we can go a little harder today, but understand that soon they're going to have to cut weight and energy levels are going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the piece. And I think like that right there alone sets is what makes or breaks an athlete. And I like specifically meaning like a fighter, but even in the, like we dive into other sports, the only difference with like the other sports is that there's not as much you have to worry about. There's specified seasons that you get to work through. Like, when off season is, when the season starts, when like, all that stuff. Where a fighter, you have to kind of manage all that with the unknown of like when the next fight's going to be. And you have to do that year round for however long they want to fight. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot. And I think that getting an athlete to a competition, or we can even say a competitive season, right, requires an opportunity to like recover, like Jerry just said. And again, you can talk about that in like 5 different ways, right? We can talk about recovery between exercises. We can talk about recovery between sessions. We can then talk about recovery between weeks. And then we can talk about recovery between months. And then like, obviously you can really, branch out from there. But if we start from that perspective of like, hey, how are you recovering between your exercises, right? Then how are you recovering between your workouts? Then how are you recovering between your weeks? How are you recovering between your months, right? And you lay that out in a program, and we want those things to be positive. Obviously, we need hard days. If you're getting ready for a fight, there's going to be days where it's like, hey, listen, we got to push through this a little bit because we need to get this done. But if you're doing that every single day, like you're putting that, what Jerry just said, you're putting that opportunity to recover lower, and you're putting that opportunity for injury higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the end of like fighters, you're losing that, you're losing calories, you're increasing demand on the body, and you're kind of like teetering this fine line while you're also getting battered on a daily
Yeah.
basis training. And I think that like this is the part where coaches really mess up because they try to force this idea of like it's got to suck, otherwise it wasn't good. And this is something I learned a lot with Ian, was that like Ian was really good at taking days off. If Ian didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel good for any reason, like it could be fucking too many clouds, he would take the day off. And it was like
I don't like the way that one's looking at me.
literally like he would, like me and Layla would joke around about it, but like there would just be days he's like, I'm not doing that today. And I was like, we got to do something. And he's like, no, we don't. I was like, okay, like whatever. So
All right.
I think those situations are tough because, you know, or good in the sense of like working with Ian, because I was always around people who were like more. I'm not doing enough. It's not hard enough. It's not, you know, it doesn't hurt enough. And I was like, well, what do you like, dude? Not every single session has to hurt. And like, you're feeling better. And this is the sort of thing where it's like someone was feeling better, they're looking better, they're performing better, but they don't feel like they're doing enough. And it was almost like this reverse psychology where they're like, I feel too good, I must not be doing enough. Right. And with everybody that I worked with, as I started to kind of like get my footing, I came in and I was like, hey, listen, you know, and it wasn't just by default. I wasn't just like, you know, you have to do less. It was just like, hey, listen, I'm looking at what you're doing and you're doing the same thing as everybody else. You're training 3 times a day. You're not eating enough. You're not getting enough recovery. And each session's at like 100%. So like, how about we organize this a little bit smarter? We make the hard sessions really hard, and we have the light sessions, we keep them really light, and we don't go over a certain point or certain threshold or certain output, and see how you feel. And we, you know, for all the people I did, especially like Amanda, for example, Amanda was someone who obviously lost the fight against Juliana, the first one, because she was hurt. Like she was physically unable to step into that ring, but she did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there, she was in pain. She was dealing with knee pain. She was dealing with hip pain. Her shoulder was bothering her. And I was just like, hey, listen, from what I see and what you tell me, you're doing way too much. Your sessions are way too hard. And she didn't have an off switch. So I went in, I made the sessions a lot more specific. I made them a lot more efficient, and we got what we needed, and that was it. And then we got out. There was no extra credit or extra stuff just because we had extra time. It was like we finished what was on the list. We're done, right? And I think for athletes, for people who have a competition, there's 3 things I want to kind of touch on. One, the off season is the off season, right? Treat it as the off season. There's at no point in the off season or off camp should you be going into a session and leaving feeling like you just died. Like that's just not the time for it. Like there's so much time that comes for getting ready for a fight. Like use that time to recover. Use that time to build on the skills that you need to build on. Build your base, build the floor. Make sure that you're working on these skills. If you have a weak core, if you are feeling like you don't have enough power, if you're feeling like you're not fast enough, if you're feeling like there's pieces that you want to improve, the off season should be that. Improve on those skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's going to kind of be that pre-camp phase. That should be to get ready for what's to come, right? So we're building resilience. We're still not pushing ourselves 100% because that's going to come in that pre-camp phase or that peak phase. But we're getting all the necessary skills ready that we need to work on to make sure when the time comes, they're prepared, right? And then that peak phase, that's when we push it. But we also don't want to be in that peak phase for more than 4 to 6 weeks, right? And that's when we're getting ready for a fight. But in other cases, it's like when you have to deal with this like year-round type sport, because this is another thing too. Whereas, you know, with fighting, you know, it is a year-round sport, but there's short windows where you have to be like 100% on point, right? In all these other sports, really like specifically like basketball and football, you know, they're really long sports. Like football's, you know, a 6-month season for the most part if your team's good. And as you're playing
Baseball
that sport,
too, yeah.
oh, baseball, yeah, baseball's just not as like physical, obviously, but baseball's a very long season with, you know, that doesn't demand as much of you physically on the field, but what it doesn't demand physically, it demands mentally, right? And it's a very mental sport, and especially with the focus. It's like you got to be on point to hit a dot that's coming at you 100 miles an hour and do that consistently. And again, in baseball, success in the sport is 30% of the time. You know what I mean? Like there's no other sport in the world where if you're successful 30% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
Like you're one of the best to ever do it. So that's the piece of the puzzle that's like, okay, in these sports, there's different elements of each sport that you need to be better or you need to be the best, that you need to work on in the off season, the prep phase, and then that peak phase to make sure you're on point. And in all these sports, the difficult thing about, the team sports is that you have to be ready for such a long time. Whereas like the fight sports is like you have to be ready at any moment, right? And you have to be ready to flip that switch at any moment. Whereas like, again, basketball is like you got an 82 game season. You got to play every single day, on point, high, fast pace. And you wonder why these guys fall apart. You know what I mean? And why you fall off so quick, or you see these guys with like this speed and this twitchiness and they lose it after 5 seasons and then they fall off a cliff. It's just like, it's so normal and it's so hard to be LeBron. It's so hard to be Kobe. It's so hard to be Jordan. It's so hard to be these guys who are good for 15 plus years at the highest level and then continuously do it without getting injured. But that's what a lot of this stuff comes down to. It's like prepping the right way, taking care of your body, understanding when it's time to rest, you rest. When it's time to go, you go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in these pieces, like, you safely progress by doing all the things we just talked about. And if you can manage these moments in the right way, then when it comes time to get ready for the competition, you're going to be ready. You're going to perform at your best. And God forbid, you're going to feel fucking good doing it.
Yeah, I think that's something you mentioned the off season too. Like that's the time for some skill development. Like you might not be going 100% all the time. You need to recover. A big reason that you want that recovery is a lot of the skill movements that you have too are high central nervous system output stuff. So if you're going 100% in all your workouts and you're working on your skill set too, that's going to be really draining. And that's why you don't do it toward like the peak season. That's why you're not working on all those skills in the peak right before competition, is because if you are, then you're not going to get much out of it. It's a lot of, like I said, central nervous system output. So that's less recovery on your end, which can cause whether it's injury, sickness, whatever it might be, but you're not going to be able to perform at the highest level if you're worrying about those things in the wrong time.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And I think that one of the biggest things to kind of take away from this, obviously, is, or I'll even just get into my hot take, is, again, you should feel good when you're competing. And I can't believe that that's a hot take, but you shouldn't feel like shit. You know what I mean? You shouldn't question whether you're going to be able to step into the ring or compete on a given, on a nightly basis. It's obviously, you have bad nights, you have moments where it's like, all right, I just don't feel my best, but you should feel good, right? Specifically at points where it's like fighters, you should feel good the morning of, right? When you are rehydrated, you go through that process, you should feel good, right? For team sports, you should feel great on the first game of the season. Like you shouldn't be going into a season being like, fuck, like I'm hurting, right? Because if you did, you just wasted the entire offseason. Like what were you doing? And like, unless that it's like a contract year or there's something you really need to push through for some reason or another, like you should feel 100% healthy, safe, and on point when you step into the new season. And then you got to go through the season, and that's when you got to kind of like be ready for whatever and nicks and bumps and things like that and things that might hurt, and you manage it as you go. But I think as these athletes start to get better inside of these, no, I'm not gonna do it.
the shit I hear my niece and nephews say all day.
I didn't say.
You didn't have to. You did the stupid hand thing.
I know. Yeah, so you have to be ready. You have to make sure that those points, like when you're supposed to feel good, you should be feeling good. And because that's a hot take, it might not be like a hot take in our side of things, but I think with most athletes, if you talk to them and you're like, hey, you should feel good when you're about to compete, they're going to be like, oh, well, then I don't think I trained hard enough, or I've never felt good when I competed truly. Like you always get the question, you always ask them, like, how you feeling? They're like, great. But then you really sit down after and they're like, everything hurt. I was miserable. I didn't sleep. And you're like, that shouldn't happen. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that's obviously the pressures of the sport, especially in MMA. It's like you have to cut weight, which is miserable. And the other sports, it's like, there's a lot that goes into getting ready for those seasons. And yeah, anything to add to that?
Based on your hot take, no, because that was perfect. But I will say my hot take is, which again shouldn't really be a hot take, but you should not be going for a PR every single session.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's
Dude, I've seen some arguments recently online where coaches are like, you should be going for a PR every session. Every time you go into the gym, give it 100%. It's like, context, not really. And it's just driving
giving 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean going
exactly.
for a PR.
So yes, thank you. So that was what I was going to get into. Going 100% in the gym will look different every day. It doesn't mean give it 100% toward a PR every single day. So that's my hot take. Also, like Brandon said, like when you're going, what?
Intended effort, 100% every day.
Yes, exactly. And 100% good intent from both the athlete
I think it's art.
and
I
trainer.
think this is something we talked about. But again, like if you know an athlete's going to be that type of person, I'll let you finish in a second.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that athlete's going to be that type of person who's like, I need to give 100%, make sure their 100% is like 70%. Like set them up so that their 100% is 70%. And we can do that in strength conditioning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I've probably said this 100 times again as well. You can't, like jujitsu, it's really hard to like stop someone or make someone go 70%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone gets you in something, you go crazy. It's hard. With us, if you know someone comes in and they're like ready to go and they're going to give 100%, cool. Just make sure that 100% that they don't leave 70% actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like don't give them an opportunity to go outside of that. Don't give them movements that are going to make them push outside of that. If you want them to be a little bit more relaxed that day, don't give them trap bar deadlifts. Don't give them back squats. Don't give them bike sprints, right? Like create parameters that make them stay within a box that they can give 100% on, but still keeps them where you need them to be. And that's where the precision of programming comes in to make sure that they're getting what they need while also staying in what you think they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Brandon said too, like going into the season, you shouldn't just feel fresh. Your athlete should feel eager, excited, and be itching to get into that competition or fight if it's fighting or lifting or whatever it might be, or a team sport. They should be ready to be like, oh man, coach, I can't wait to get on the field, or I can't wait to get on the court, the ice, the whatever. That's how you know you did a good job. If they're dreading it and they're like, I don't know, man, it's like, okay, maybe we did something wrong, and then in your yearly coaching audit, you can reevaluate what you did for the next season.
Exactly. And for the second to last part, reevaluate your peaking process, the drill. I forgot the name of it. Sorry. Reevaluate your peaking process and make sure that you're putting your athletes in the best position to succeed. And I think just even going back to what I just said, too many people allow their athletes to get into those places of discomfort too easy, right? Like if you know your athlete is someone who pushes and grinds and has that mentality, don't give them the opportunity. If you know there's someone who tends to sandbag a little bit, push them. Make the parameters of the workout one that they have to follow so they get that stimulus. And we can do that, again, from every single aspect, from the tempos to the sets to the reps to the weights to the movements to the limitations to the assistance to whatever it might be, to the point where it's like, hey, if you want someone to work on a hinge but you know they're going to go 110% and try to max out on the deadlift, then switch it to like a single leg deadlift or a single leg RDL or something like that where they can't get that heavy on the weight. And it's and there's restrictions or limitations in regards to the actual skill of the movement. If it's a conditioning piece, make sure you're writing out the exact pace that you want them to go at for the exact time that you want them to go at, and explain the stimulus and the information that they need to take in so they can give the right information or give the right output on the other end of it. And I think a lot of this stuff, again, comes down to the coach, comes down to the communication, comes down to the program design and the prescription of this stuff, and making sure that you're actually putting them in the best position to succeed. Because I do think athletes, for the most part, don't know any better, right? Like they don't know, they don't want to leave a session feeling like, damn, I could have given more, right? But if you tell them like, hey, this is what you need, this is like, trust me, they're going to leave and they're going to be like, damn, I gave everything I did that session and I got what I needed out of it. Right. But a lot of times coaches set them up for failure. Like how many times have, you seen coaches or even yourself, like, and I've done it before too. And this is where you learn. It's like, you have a workout, you write it. Like I had this workout one time. It worked great in my head. I was like, oh, this is going to make perfect sense. It was a bike workout. It was a conditioning piece. It was, I designed it to increase in intensity throughout a 5-minute round with like a minute rest to kind of basically mimic that like rise in heart rate on the bike. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the person got through like a round and a half and they like couldn't go anymore because it was like way too hard. And I was like, damn, okay, like that was a total mistake on my part because obviously like the way I wrote it out RPM wise and then actually doing it, like actually physically doing it, were completely two different stories. So I had to sit back and actually change it and be like, okay, well, like let me change this to like time intervals inside of the 5 minutes as opposed to like minute 1 is here, minute 2 is here, minute 3 is here, minute 4 is here. And I gave that person the runway to fail essentially in that workout. And like that's on me. So I had to go back to the table. I had to really reword the wording. I had to rewrite the time intervals. I had to rewrite the prescription, and I had to then come back to it the next week. And she crushed it. She did amazing at it, and she felt better. She got through the workout. But that sort of thing you can't do too many times before an athlete's like, well, what are you doing? Like, are you putting me in the right position to succeed here? Because they want to see results, right? They want to see progress. They want to feel good. And you have to allow them and fit them in the parameters that show success in what they need and then show success in the ways that they want. So that's a really important aspect of coaching.
Yeah, that outline really helps too because athletes want to complete a goal. Like they want to score, right? So they want to have that task to complete. If you tell them exactly how to do it, they'll follow it to a T. Athletes have that whole mindset of like, do the right thing, coach will love it, team will love it, we'll win.
Yeah,
so if you give them that outline, it's super easy for them to follow. This train, I'm going to give it a good punch.
100%. But the last thing, influence pick of the week is me and Jared. Ask us some questions. I've had so many fight camps to this point. I've had so many opportunities to help people peak and get ready for performance and get ready for events. Like, just ask me. I'll be more than happy to kind of take you through the process, take you through my process and the things that I do and the way that I do it, and the way I've helped countless people win belts, countless people win fights, countless people get into the rankings, all that. I'm more than happy to sit down and talk. But I think that my experience can be very helpful in this because I've really kind of had a bunch of opportunities to take some athletes who really don't have an idea on how to like tone it down a bit and get so much more out of training by being a little bit smarter as opposed to like running yourself into the ground. So my influence pick this week is myself.
Did you just give yourself Employee of the Month?
I did.
No, I swear to God, I didn't. No. Yeah, no, that's a good influence pick. I would pick Brandon. Pick Brandon.
Anything to add to that?
No, I don't have an influence pick, but I will say that when you are writing your programming, just remember, like, build that foundation in the skeleton first, especially because we talked about this a little bit with the off camp, in camp, and off season, in season. Build that skeleton and have a plan in mind, but also don't forget it's okay to stray away when needed and be able to adapt in the moment.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. And don't forget, the yearly coaching audit is going to be in the description below. Download the paper, print it, put it on your wall, look at it every single day, answer the questions because your coaching career is going to get better if you follow the questions that me and Gerald came up with. Okay? Indubitably. Follow it, fill it out. The end of the year is going to be here before you know it. By the time you're listening to this podcast, it's going to be like December 12th, I think. And Santa's going to be coming 12 days later. And you don't want to get caught holding the bag. That's all I'm saying.
Damn. That's not a closeout. I don't know what is, man. That was perfect.
Mic drop.
Nothing to add.
I appreciate you guys. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.